program as well. Good evening, and thank you for joining tonight for GABWA's legislative series on protecting the Black vote. I'm Shamirical Rankin, this year's GABWA president. Before we delve into tonight's program, I would like to acknowledge GABWA's founding members and past presidents that are in attendance, as well as our fellow bar leaders and elected officials. Thank you for joining us. This year, GABWA is presenting a three-part legislative series that will focus on expanding the Black vote, keeping Black voters on the rolls, and stopping voter suppression efforts in Georgia. Tonight's expert panel will set the tone for this series. Please join us on Thursday, March 4th and March 11th, where we will discuss specific bills that are before the Georgia legislature. Our last two series are interactive advocacy events where you will learn how to influence the passage of helpful legislation and stop bills that are harmful. These series have been approved for 3 CLE credits. We will place additional information in the chat regarding who you should contact if you would like to apply for CLE credits for tonight's panel. If you would like to join GABWA or renew your membership dues, please use the link that will be placed in the comments. Again, thank you for attending tonight's event. A special thank you to our subcommittee chair, Marissa Dotson, who has led the planning efforts for this series. We hope that you enjoy tonight's program. Marissa, I will turn the floor over to you for the introduction of our moderator.
Thanks, Miracle, and thank you all for being here today. I have the esteemed privilege of introducing Representative Kim Schofield, a dear friend and ally to the Southern Center and many advocacy organizations in our state. State Representative Kim Schofield serves the citizens of House District 60, which includes areas of Southeast Atlanta, East Point, College Park, Forest Park, and Hateville. She was elected to the Georgia General Assembly in 2017 and serves on the Small Business Development, Interstate Cooperation, and Health and Human Services Committee. She is an appointed member to the Atlanta Commission on Women. As a public servant, Kim lives out her core values of access, action, and accountability. Kim's professional career spans across healthcare, financial, transportation, education, and nonprofit agencies. She has more than 15 years of experience in consulting, coaching, teaching, training workshops, and engagement seminars, bringing alignment with political, corporate, community, law enforcement, healthcare, and faith-based organizations. Representative Schofield is a small business owner. As a personal development strategist, her coaching practice, Other People's Potential Coaching, works with individuals and organizations to position them for maximizing their capacity. Please join me in welcoming Representative Schofield as she introduces us to the panelists for this evening. Thank you so much, Representative Schofield, for being here.
Well, good evening, everyone. Good evening, and thank you, Marissa, for inviting me to this esteemed panel. And good evening, GABWA family. Truly, you are fantastic women that shaking things up, make a difference, and I always like to hang out with those kind of people. Speaking of some great panelists tonight, people that you need to know, ought to know, want to know, and if you don't know, now you're gonna know. We have our esteemed panelists tonight for the evening will be Ms. Helen Butler. Helen Butler is the Executive Director for the Coalition for the People's Agenda, an advocacy organization comprised of representatives from human rights, civil rights, environmental, labor, peace, and justice groups throughout the state of Georgia and other southern states, southeastern states. Ms. Butler is also the local voter protection advocate for the Advancement Project, a racial and social justice organization that works with communities to seeking to build fair and just multiracial democracy. She served as the 5th Congressional District Coordinator for the NAACP Voter Fund and the Georgia State Coordinator for the NAACP Voter Empowerment Program. Ms. Butler currently directs the Coalition for the People's Agenda's Count Me Black Complete Count Committee activities to increase the response rate of the undercounted African, African American, Afro-Latino, and Caribbean communities. Listen, Miss Butler, again, is someone that I can't even say she's a mover and a shaker. Wherever she is, the ground shakes. So we're gonna hear from her later on, but you have to know Ms. Helen Butler. Next is our esteemed Andrea Young. She is the executive director of the 22,000 member American Civil Liberties Union of Georgia. She is a lifelong advocate for civil and human rights. The ACLU of Georgia is a trusted, ethical, nonpartisan defender of our civil liberties, opposing threats to civil liberties, combating voter suppression, supporting criminal justice reform, protecting freedom of speech, immigration rights, women's rights, especially reproductive rights. Under her leadership, the ACLU of Georgia has reimagined its work on the framework integrating legal action, policy, advocacy, civic engagement, and communication. Another woman, she's a graduate of, they're gonna give you their credentials. We wanna hear from them, not hear about them. But if you don't know Miss Andrea Young, you've been sleeping. That's all I'm gonna tell you. Next we have our own Attorney Francys Johnson, a seasoned trial attorney and partner of Davis Bozeman Johnson Law. Francys Johnson represents people seriously injured and or killed, along with persons charged with a serious state or federal crime. He's a member of the Board of Governors for the State Bar. State Bar, and involved in Georgia's historic campaign. After the campaign ended, Hillary mentioned, no, I'm sorry, I'm in the wrong one. Sorry about that, y'all. I'm like, this doesn't seem, hang on. There we go.
It's more than fine to move on to the illustrious Hillary.
Right, well, you're the man. I gotta just say a couple things about you though. Not only is he illustrious, he's a senior pastor of Mount Moriah Baptist Church in Pembroke and Magnolia Baptist Church in Statesboro. If you need a man to go in battle with you, let me just tell you who he is. His name is Francys Johnson. And lastly, we have Hillary Holley. She was born in Augusta, Georgia, raised in Lawrenceville. She moved to Atlanta and attended Georgia State University, where she became an active in local criminal justice reform movements. After graduating from college, Hillary began applying to law school while she taught at middle school and doing amazing work. She left teaching and in 2018 and started a coordinated campaign with Abrams for governor. And she is continuing to make history. So you'll hear from each and every one of them. But as we know right now, Georgia is not just in a state of shakeup. Georgia is lost their minds. And so tonight we're going to hear from a panelist that are going to give you some strategies, give you a context of understanding, it's time for us to not just wake up, stay woke, and then take action. So tonight, I want to kick the panelists off by just starting the conversation on where we are right now in Georgia's history. Under the Gold Dome right now, we know we are fighting for voter rights to hang on to everything that we have. So this is a time for us to understand the game plan of what they think they're doing, the bills, the voter suppression bills that are trying to turn us back. And we know we're not a backwards people. We're always forward moving, forward thinking, and forward action. So tonight, let's talk a little bit about what's going on. How can we expand the Black vote in Georgia? And let's give us some context of what's really going on. And I'll start with you, Attorney Francys Johnson. Tell us what's going on.
Well, thank you so much. First of all, let me say to the distinguished attorneys of GABWA that the men of GABWA are here with you as well. I say that on behalf of all of the Black lawyers across the state who champion the work that you do, and we're excited to be here on behalf of the men's auxiliary. Let me also say to the panelists, what you have in front of you is the de facto Department of Defense as it relates to the voting regime in Georgia, and has been so since the Shelby decision came down from the Supreme Court. You've got the ACLU, you've got the People's Agenda, you've got the New Georgia Project that I chair, you've got Fair Fight. You've got you've got Representative Schofield from the General Assembly, and so this is really been the heart of the Department of Defense. What's going on now is nothing new. This is a part of the history of this state when it comes to power. Power is, in terms of politics, is not complicated. Don't let anybody fool you. It's simply who gets what, when, where, and if you get it at all. And the right to vote is your voice in terms of what is the common good as we mete out that power. And in this state, the franchise as it relates to Black and brown people has always been frustrated. And those of us who are on this line in word and deed, in litigation, on the front lines, picketing, in bills before the General Assembly, have tried to fight the modern iteration of Georgia's damnable history of denying the franchise, even with violence, denying the franchise to Black and brown people. This is a moment that is no different from the moments that we've experienced across Georgia history. In this moment, we're ready for it, and we will meet this challenge like we always have. And that's why this panel is so important.
Thank you. Let me kick this question out. Can you tell us why the John Lewis Voting Rights Act is so important? Why is it needed now?
Well, it's important right now simply because the federal voting regime is totally neutered. It was done so by the Supreme Court in the Shelby versus Holder decision, which comes out of Alabama, which gutted significant protections of the Voting Rights Act that had been adopted in the civil rights movement and reauthorized by Republican administrations and had most recently been authorized for 25 years by George W. Bush, overwhelmingly by the Congress. And the Supreme Court gutted it. And they took out preclearance, they took out major protection. And in the wake of that, states like Georgia went back to their old ways. Not that they ever stopped doing it in the first place, but at least we had some protections against it. And they immediately put in restrictions that would have been forbidden under the Voting Rights Act. They adopted all kinds of policies like eliminating voting locations, narrowing opportunities for people to be able to register and to be able to stay on the rolls and to be able to cast the ballot. And we need a federal regime because Georgia, the best predictor of future behavior is past performance. And Georgia is just as backwards, and they're not going to change. Matter of fact, if you see what's going on right now in the General Assembly, they're doubling down on that download behavior. So we need a federal regime, and the John Lewis Act would do it. People who claim they love John Lewis, show me your love by passing this act. It needs to be done right now.
Thank you. Anyone else want to chime in?
Yeah, just to reiterate what Francis has said. So, as someone who does bring voting rights litigation, the difference between pre-clearance and a litigation is the difference between a few months and a few years. So we have been successful in bringing voting rights litigation. But with pre-clearance, these things never take it. So everything that's going on right now would be subject to pre-clearance. It would not take effect because it is reducing the ability of African Americans to cast ballots. So it's a difference between an administrative remedy that's quick and effective and prevents discriminatory laws from going into effect, and litigation after the fact, which is very costly and takes several years, to accomplish.
As a follow-up, let me ask what, if anything, we can do, the Voting Rights Advancement Act can do, should be introduced and passed here in Georgia. What can we do? Is there anything that we can do?
Well, in Georgia, I will just say that we need the same thing. We need a Voting Rights Act for Georgia. We need to have permanent kinds of things that will make voting easy, fair, and accessible. We had a record turnout, 71% turnout in November. And the same 67% in the runoff election. We changed democracy for the country by electing 2 senators from Georgia. So we need similar kinds of legal avenues because we can't get it legislatively until we all elect people that will do the right thing, to do what is right, not just what they want to go out on misinformation and disinformation, because there was no fraud. We had great turnout results in November and December, and all they're doing is trying to block us from exercising that right to vote. Black women have always voted in high numbers as a demographics. We've had the highest turnout percentages in all elections. And so they saw that we learned the techniques that they had always been using, like vote by mail or absentee voting. And we did that. The young folks turned out in record numbers. They saw that power we have, they want to take it back. And so they're implementing these draconian things that Dr. King and Andrea Young and Dr. Lowry and everybody fought for back in the 60s. They're trying to bring them back, but we can't let them do that. And we've shown if we turn out in mass numbers, we can make the difference in any election cycle. So the barriers may be there, but we're going to learn how to go around those barriers, and we're going to turn out and we'll do the same thing.
Yeah, and we're being pretty successful. We have turned back they've come a long way from where they started. Now we're not done, but we have pushed back successfully, and we can get into the specifics because we do really need to talk about HB 531 at some point, which will be on the floor on Monday. But I know Hillary has a good perspective on these issues as well. So.
Yeah, well, first, I just want to say thank you for having me. In 2020, we saw the attack, not just on voting rights, but individual voters. They were trying to criminalize voters, specifically Black rural voters. And what we had to do in response was to form a coalition to get criminal defense attorneys lined up to help represent, and GABWA was there every step of the way. So I truly, truly, from the bottom of my heart, want to say thank you for all the work that you all did, especially Michelle Arrington on this call. But what Andrea said, we are in one of the worst backlashes that we have seen in the South since Reconstruction, and it's no exaggeration. We have a now 66 page voting bill in the House. We also have a nearly 40-page anti-voting bill in the Senate. We are in a fight for democracy, and the horrifying thing, and I'm so glad that we were talking about HR 4, is this isn't just happening. Sorry, oh my cat. This isn't just happening in Georgia. It's happening in Arizona, in Texas, in Pennsylvania, in Michigan. But they started it right here. There's over 250 pieces of this legislation around the country, but 20% of those bills are here in the state of Georgia. But the good news is that because we are so coordinated here, is that we've slowed down the process. They first introduced HB 531 and only gave people 2 hours to read 46 pages before having it in committee. And we blocked the vote 4 times because we demanded to slow it down. And because of that, the bill is, it keeps getting longer, but it keeps getting better. But because it's 66 pages, we still have to pressure people to vote no, because it's not okay. And then the same thing in SB 241. And because I'm on a call with lawyers, one of the most concerning pieces of that bill that's not in the press that much is it will mandate for the Secretary of State to have a voter fraud hotline, and any person that calls that hotline, that report automatically gets referred to the Attorney General's office, and he has to investigate it within 3 days. So what that means, if a racist person calls saying that someone looks like they're illegally voting, they are going to be under investigation by the Attorney General of Georgia. And that means that all the work that we did in 2020 to find representation for people who were being attacked and threatened to be criminalized, we are going to have to triple that effort if SB 241 passes as is, specifically with that provision. And so what we're seeing here is something that I never thought I would see in lifetime, to be honest. But because what Ms. Helen Butler said, and Andrea Young and Francys, because Black people showed their power and proved to the country that we matter and we have our voice, they are just coming at us from every single. So I appreciate y'all having me, but what's going on in the Georgia General Assembly is just some of the worst things that we've seen in a long time.
And I can, sympathize and empathize. And I always said I would never, ever, never thought I would see this in my lifetime. And you are a lot younger than I am, young lady. But so that means we got to work harder. And continuing on this conversation, we know that voter suppression is obvious. But many of the sponsors of the bill in this session have suggested that their proposal will ensure that the elections are legitimate. Are there any factual based concerns with the election fraud that we should be addressing as lawmakers?
Let's be clear, security is a new code word for voter suppression.
That's right.
They come up with their code words, they ring the dog whistle. I heard Barry Fleming talking on one of the bar groups. He claims that he's trying to inspire confidence because the people that the president lied to about voter fraud now don't have confidence in the system. And so his answer then is to take votes away. But what he's really saying is we're worried that 300,000 white people might not vote. We're talking family here, right? So, 300,000 white people might not vote because the president has told them that the system is rigged since he didn't win. And so they now have to suppress an equivalent number of Black votes so that they stay in the game. So rather than go to their people and say the president lied to you, this election was counted 3 different times, once by hand. There was a Georgia Bureau of Investigation did an audit, and the Secretary of State in October and still to this day refers to the rules that we have as a gold standard. That we have a gold standard that's a trifecta of automatic registration. We need to have same-day registration, but automatic registration, 16 days of early voting, and no excuse absentee ballots. And he still maintains that that is a gold standard. Nevertheless, there are 40 bills, 50 bills, we can't keep track, that would do everything from, make it illegal for you to give water to your neighbor who's standing in line. They tried to say you had to have a permission slip from the government to vote absentee. And so we have been working relentlessly to try to push this thing back, but people need to hear from everywhere. This weekend, every place these legislators go, they need to hear, have y'all gone crazy? We worked our tails off to have a successful election. 5 million people voted. It was counted 3 times. What is your problem? Leave well enough alone. Why don't you spend some time getting us some COVID vaccines? Why don't you spend time making sure how our kids are going to get back in school? And so, this is it is just outrageous. We are fighting it, but we need everybody in the community to raise the alarm. It's very serious.
Andrea, I couldn't agree with you more. When you consider the fact, and I want you to understand this, the Republicans have been in charge of the General Assembly for the last 20 years. They wrote these rules. These we certainly litigated, and we've certainly negotiated, and we've certainly fought for the the expansion of voting opportunities, including weekend voting and Sunday voting, and drop boxes and keeping people on the rolls after they've been purged. And we've done all of that, but they wrote these rules. These were their rules, and they lost under the rules they wrote. And so instead of coming up with better ideas that ring in the hearts of people in terms of what is their common good, they're proposing in this legislation to, and I want you to understand how this legislation will impact, just using the numbers from the last election. If they're successful, 244,000 people who voted in person in the general and runoff elections would now be eliminated under their rules, because they would go after weekend and early voting. And that's what they're trying to do. More than 1 million people, matter of fact, 1,359,000 people who voted in the runoff elections would be eliminated as well, because they would limit early voting and runoff elections to the last 5 days before the election. 67,000 Georgians who registered to vote in the runoff outside of the window that the GOP now proposes would not have been able to cast a ballot. And what that means is Joe Biden would not have carried Georgia. What that means is Raphael Warnock would not be the junior senator from Georgia, and John Ossoff would not be the senior senator from Georgia, giving Kamala Harris the tie-breaking vote in the Senate that we can move a progressive agenda forward. This, let's not mince words. This is a power grab, an attempt to rewrite rules they wrote because they can't win. They cannot win. And so this is what we've got to fight about.
And Francis, what they're trying to do is really retain the power, all the power. They're trying to take over boards of elections, really, so that they can control every aspect, not just the procedures, but they can control the implementation of those processes.
That's right.
So it takes away just like they tried to do with the school takeover. This is what they are trying to do now, to have a czar that will determine if boards of elections are not in compliance. And if they're not in compliance, then this czar is going to take over. But guess what they're saying? The county would have to pay the state for that person to be taken over the elections, which is crazy. We fought that back before, but they're trying to do that. Why are they looking at controls? Look at Fulton, Cobb, DeKalb. If they do something, and if you see these now boards of elections, state election board meetings, they're bringing those big counties up on charges, and they're basically errors. I mean, how many people can make an innocent error? Like you missed something, but you found it, and you still have to go before the Attorney General. Well, that's just so that they can take control over those large populous counties and can control who has access and how they implement those laws. So it's everything that they're doing to control power and make sure that they control themselves. And we have to remember later on, they're going to be drawing the lines in redistricting. So they are looking at every aspect of how can they control, how can they retain the power, how can they make the decision where the votes go.
That's right.
Well, that being said, and while I got you on fire, talk to us a little bit about, the keeping the Black voters on the rolls. Talk about what's going on with this purging.
You talk to me?
Yeah, you on fire now. Come on.
Well, they always tried to purge the voters, right? And who is it? I mean, they started with this great purge down in a little small county called Hancock, where they had the sheriff go and try to take the people, notify them that they were going to be purged. But the new purge is not just that mass thing where they map your name with this like Eric or cross-check, which is a faulty system, matching it to your Social Security database or to the driver's license database. Because if somebody puts something in wrong, then you're in there incorrectly and could be removed, Or they're saying, well, you didn't vote in 2 presidential election cycles, so I'm going to take you off. Well, hey, and the new thing that they're doing right now for taking you off is saying, I want to challenge you. I want to give you a list of 1,000 people right before election, right before you go vote. I want to challenge you. That's a way that I can take you off without you having the ability, because then you have to go to a hearing. And how many people after the election is over is going to want to go to a hearing? So these are ways that they're trying to take us off, take people off the roll. But here in Georgia, to take you off doesn't automatically take you totally off the system. So what it may do is put you in an inactive status. And if you're in inactive status, you can go back and just go vote. It takes you off. But of course, you got to tell people that, but they don't do that either. So it's a system designed to make sure that they control, again, the numbers that Francis was referring to.
Yeah, to give an example of doing just that, this group, True the Vote, who's somebody that one of their big donors has asked for his $2 million back. But they wrote to every one of 159 counties challenging voters. And if the county election boards, we wrote then to every single one and called them, and the party did, and but if they hadn't heard from organizations like ours, some of these people would have taken folks off the rolls, and people would have shown up on election day. 330,000 people they attacked in the last week or so before the runoff election. So, even Warnock's 80, 90,000 votes would have been wiped out. I mean, they keep coming, trying to find ways to, and I keep reminding people, these are Georgia citizens. Mm-hmm. We're talking about citizens and everything in this bill hurts Georgia citizens who are eligible to cast a ballot. Every single thing. They're not talking about people from they're not talking about people who aren't, registered. Now we can talk some more about who they consider to be eligible, like felon reenfranchisement and so forth, same day registration. But even under their own rules, this bill would make it more difficult for Georgia citizens who are currently eligible to vote to actually exercise that right. And it is diabolical. It's just diabolical. It's heartbreaking, really, because we've been doing this too long.
Yeah, and one thing I want to add is, and I'm so glad that we're mentioning True the Vote. During the runoff, we were dealing with a recount 3 times. At the same time, we were trying to get people out to vote for the runoff. And then True the Vote comes and starts dropping investigations, like Andrea and Ms. Helen was saying, one by one by one. And not only were they challenging these voters, they were releasing their names and their addresses. And next thing you know, they were getting death threats. We had voters who had to be in hiding in 2020, or even in January 2021. Black women hiding because racist people did not want them to vote. And that was intentional. And during that time, the Secretary of State and Gabe Sterling was all over national news talking about they're trying to kill us and people need to stop. But when it came to the death threats of their own election workers and Black voters in Georgia, they did nothing to stop it. And what they're actually doing now is allowing those same people now to pressure their legislators to drop all these bills. So we need to be very, very clear that the Republican Party is now listening and being controlled by the same people who literally try to get Black voters killed inside of their homes and then went and stormed the US Capitol. That is what the Republican Party is doing in Georgia today. And so for all the people who are on the phone that talk to business leaders in this state, we need to make it really clear that Black people should not be threatened with death because they want to vote.
Yeah.
That's where we are at.
So maybe for the lawyers that are on this call, we should be clear that this is to maintain power after those who are in power are no longer the majority. And quite honestly, in many parts of the state, that is already the truth of the matter. And we commonly refer to a government that is run by the minority um, as an apartheid, and that's what they're setting up, is an apartheid. And we're sort of jumping around about how they have gone about doing that, and it starts even before you register to vote, and that's with Georgia's exact match program, where you have to have an exact match of the driver's license as well as the Social Security Administration's database, which is fraught with errors. That means if you got married and have a hyphen in your name, or your proper name is Thomas and you've signed up as Tom, or any of the other, or just a transposition of your information, not even by you, but by a worker in the registration office, keying your information in, you are not even allowed on the voter registration rolls. You're sent a letter that says one of 16 things could be wrong. Figure it out if you can. Stop people from even getting on the rolls. Then once you're on the rolls, in the name of roll maintenance, they purge 2, 3, 400,000 people from the rolls, and we've been able to successfully fight that. But it's taken hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's taking, well, millions really, and it's a lot of work to do that, just to get back to zero, if you will. And so keeping folks on the rolls. We've talked about, Helen Butler's mentioned, um, how this will work out after the census in terms of redistricting. That's another tool of suppression. That's why, although Georgia has been a battleground state for a long time, overwhelming majority of our congressional districts go to the extreme Republicans, because they've drawn the districts in such a way that gerrymandered so badly that people can't elect representatives who truly will serve their community. And so that, and beyond that, another suppressive tactic, and I'll lift this because it's personal, is that they are going after our organizations. They're going after, back when my good friend Stacey Abrams was leading the New Georgia Project, they went after the New Georgia Project. They're still going after the New Georgia Project right now to this day. As chairman of that organization now, I take it personally, because they wanted to make a felon out of Stacey Abrams in 2014, and they would have done it if we hadn't stood up, because they knew that her message was authentic and would resonate with voters, and they were trying to stop her then, and they will try to stop those who are moving forward towards progress now. So they'll go after organizations, they'll criminalize and try to make criminals out of those of us who are simply trying to get people to participate in the democratic process. These are all the tactics, and there are many more that they will use to try to set up an apartheid in this state. But we won't let them. You won't let them. And so that's why we're on this panel tonight.
Thank you for that, Francis. This is Miriam Archibong, and I want to invite the listeners, if you all have any questions, please place them in the chat. We have about 8 minutes for Q&A. So I want to ask a question that was presented by some folk, and listening to all of this, are there any states that can serve as a model for Georgia in ensuring access to the vote for Black voters and other marginalized communities?
The most interesting thing is Georgia had been a model for vote by mail specifically, that they are coming after. It was one of Georgia's shining things to brag about at every election conference, whether it would be conservative, liberal, progressive, it didn't matter. But a lot of times we can look to, Colorado is a really good state when it comes to vote by mail. We also can look to, Ohio a lot of times was trying to compete with Georgia on access. But just to be honest, Georgia, we were getting there because, let's be clear, because of the people on this call. That's why we were getting there. And it was working too well.
So Michigan they have a referendum process. And so they had some of the same problems with the legislature that we're seeing now. And of course, it was this battleground state where they were, of course, seeking to disenfranchise Detroit. And so, unions, ACLU, other, multicultural coalition came together and did a ballot referendum. It's not an option we have here, but they did, no excuse absentee voting, which we have had in Georgia. They did same day registration. They did a nonpartisan, commission for drawing redistricting. I think they also did felon reenfranchisement, which they did down in Florida. And then the legislature came and gutted it, so that people had to pay all their fines and fees, even though over a supermajority of the people had voted for this. So, so Michigan, is sort of, is another model again where you had a really highly contested state, and I think now because of the reforms they were able to put in their constitution. Their legislatures now can't come and roll back things the way that we're experiencing right now.
So Andrea,
and then Virginia is about to make voting a right. They're about to put voting as a right in their constitution, so that the state constitution protects the right to vote.
Andrea, I was just going to mention, this is a matter of will. And we simply, if just be honest, we have a political regime that doesn't want everyone to participate. Because if we wanted everyone to participate, we have other systems that operate differently. For example, if I get in my car and drive from Statesboro, where I'm sitting today, to Atlanta tonight, I can be stopped by a state trooper, and instantly they will have, if I get multiple tickets tonight, they will all be entered into the system. I can use multiple ATMs and not a penny will be off. There's no reason why we shouldn't have mobile voting, where I could vote regardless of where I am by simply going up to a kiosk, entering my information, and pulling up the ballot that works for where I live. There's no reason why we shouldn't have automatic registration. Why am I going through another process to register to vote when I'm a citizen? Why isn't that automatic? Just like paying my taxes is automatic, or anything else, any other facet. And so I think we have to think more imaginatively, because we have a system, to be quite frank, from the very founding that was decidedly narrow in who could be a part of that search for the common good. And we're still operating within that paradigm. I propose a whole new paradigm where we make the we the people really we the people, instead of always trying to narrow it in terms of who can really participate in the search for the common good.
Thank you for that, Francis. We have about 3 more minutes for a question that kind of segues, piggybacks on what Francis just said. What is it that we the people can do to ensure that our rights are protected and the rights of other marginalized communities are protected? Should we contact our representatives? Should we try to get various Republicans? I mean, what should we do?
All of that. I sent to Marissa just before this started a 1-pager on HB 531, which I hope she can circulate to everybody on this call. This is due to be on the floor on Monday. And so you should call your representative, call any representative you've ever given money to. In fact, call them first, and then call the speaker and say, stop HB 531. It suppresses every form of voting in Georgia. And then also sign up with one of our organizations to get regular alerts. There are, or follow us on Twitter. Yes. To get the updates, because this is a very, very fast moving situation. I mean, literally this morning, my political director, Chris Bruce, and who's single, ladies, and Helen Butler was down at the Capitol this morning, and be at 7:30 in the morning, and there's going to be another hearing 8 a.m. on Monday morning. And because we are there, they changed the bill. They look out and they say, "Oh Lord, there they are again." And so they changed the bill. But if we're not there, these bills are going through as they write them. No Black people can vote. I mean, they're trying to say that in every way they can without putting it explicitly. So so this is very fast moving situation, and people need to hear from their legislators. It is making a difference already.
And then one thing, it is making a difference. Speaker Ralston, I really think pressure needs to come from him. Yes. For those of you who serve on boards, who with boards that really care about the reputation of Georgia, we need to really start having the conversation, y'all. I mean, we have the NBA All-Star games coming up. When the state opens back up, we have the NCAA tournaments who want to come. And this is going to be such a stain, y'all, that it is going to have an economic impact because corporations are not going to want to be associated with the state of Georgia. And
we just got them over the abortion ban.
Exactly. And so I say definitely do the citizen lobbying, call the speaker. The lawyers who are really good at litigating, please reach out to these Republicans because they're trying to twist logic in very unfair ways. But then the second thing is please start having these conversations with boards and really think about what the representation of the reputation of Georgia is at stake.
And they also should be calling Congress. I've already texted Ossoff and Warnock already and told them it has to be top priority. All of Georgia's congressional delegation needs to hear that. We need HR 1 and HR 4 implemented now, not later. They passed through the Equality Act today. Well, that's good too, but we need voting HR 1 and HR 4 to be passed out of Congress right now. That will stop some of this crap that's coming from Georgia.
That's right.
And I'm going to jump in. Thank you, everyone. The Q&A, we have about 6 more minutes. So the Q&A is ended. I'm going to kick it over to Michelle Arrington to go ahead and talk about next steps.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much to our panelists. Very pertinent information, which leads us to next week. So next Thursday, March 4th at 6:30 p.m., we'll have the second part of our series, Protecting the Black Vote, Stop the Suppression. So we're actually going to talk about how to lobby your legislators, who to contact, how to contact them, and what to say. If I'm not mistaken, and one of the experts on the phone can tell me, I think March 4th is crossover day, or maybe March 11th, or is it?
It's either going to be March 4th or March 5th. We haven't gotten
okay. And the importance of crossover day is, these bills already have legs, but the ones that are more problematic, they'll go from the House to the Senate and vice versa, from the Senate to the House. And this is when we even need to voice our opinion even more. So you want to be able to contact your state legislators, and we're going to hear from some experts. Christopher Bruce, who we've learned is single, will be speaking. We'll hear from Stacey. He's going to kill me. We're going to hear from Stacey Chavis as well about how to lobby, and Marissa can remind me of the third person. I literally just forgot, I apologize. But we're gonna hear about the ways to contact, and we're also gonna attach some information and send out an educational guide. We'll attach information from these partner organizations on the phone as well about ways and things you can do. You don't have to wait till next Thursday to call. So we'll get that out to you all as soon as possible. Robin Shipp, I'm so sorry. And I'm the one who asked Robin. She's a former state legislator and a GABWA member. So she's gonna share with us a wealth of information as well. So please join us next Thursday. I think the link is in the chat, and we look forward to having you all. Thank you.
Thank you all so much for attending tonight's event. This was a dynamic panel that while we must continue the fight to keep our voting power, this year's theme is GABWA is Queen, an acronym that stands for quintessential, undaunted, empowered, excellent, and necessary. Tonight's event is a reminder of why GABWA is necessary. We must continue conversations such as these. To our esteemed panelists and moderator, thank you for taking the time out of your schedules to participate in tonight's event. We appreciate your support of GABWA and your service to Georgia. And on behalf of GABWA, thank you to everyone who attended tonight's panel. We hope you have a great evening, and we look forward to seeing you next week on March the 4th. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We love GABWA.
Thank you.
Thanks,
And we
guys. Thank you all so
appreciate you
much.
all. Thank you.
Thanks.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know what? Chris is probably watching this.